everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel and thank you guys so much for joining me. It is now Saturday afternoon and I really hope that everything here is working. If y'all can't hear me, I'm probably going to go through this before I upload this video and see how everything works out. But if you're looking at the thumbnail, well, actually, I have not decided on how I'm going to call this video because it's a very big topic to cover, and I hope that I probably am going to get into it in three parts. So let's just get into it. My main focus is, oh my day. So anyways, we have an important announcement in this video, so stay tuned to the end because I will be making a couple of very important announcements. Sorry about that. Oh, there's my allergies are acting up, y'all, and there's good reason for that. And so let's get into this topic because this is a really important topic, and I am always shocked by how much people don't know about this topic. And we're gonna get some guests onto the show between today and tomorrow, maybe Monday, to discuss one of the other really important topics that I've been um trying to push awareness on that's not really getting as much attention. Well, I hope it's just because, of the time and timing. But wow, this is the longest introduction ever. So, hip hop culture and Black culture and why they are not mutually exclusive or necessarily similar. Now, there's so many facets to this conversation, and before I get into any of the facts or details or lies about some of the important key points in Black culture, I will give a disclaimer saying that I am not a historian, okay? I did not study specifically Black culture in college or anything. I am speaking purely from a perspective of a person who has traveled and met people of Black African descent within spaces like the Black Summit, um, Black sororities, and African American Black activism. And what I started to uncover as I had the privilege and honor of meeting certain Black leaders personally, and I'm not going to call anybody out on this show because it's not my style to do that. I rarely talk about individuals on my show, but just personalities and character types. But one of the things that I found really incredible is how misinformed, and this is something I say a lot on my channel, is how misinformed people of Black African descent are. It's always been a real pet peeve of mine for people to talk about like certain rappers or certain political standpoints, even the difference between people from the Caribbean and people from like America, like African Americans versus Caribbean African Americans, even the way we make that differentiation is a huge pet peeve of mine because I feel like it doesn't really encompass the similarities. It just focuses a lot on the very, 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 very few differences. And I'm going to try and discuss some of that in this first segment called Lies and Facts, the Black African Experience in the Western Diaspora. Now, I do know a lot of historians. My stepfather was an archaeologist, anthropologist. I've worked with anthropologists before, like I've said, and I even interviewed some of these people on my channel. And so to hear them speak from a perspective, from an intelligent perspective about the history of how we came to be in the Americas is something that I really feel like people should take the time out, especially if this topic affects you directly. I won't say especially if you're Black or especially whatever. I am just going to say if this topic affects you directly, and usually it affects people directly who are of Black African descent, and therefore I think that we owe it to ourselves to have a clearer understanding of our culture from the perspective of how our story is being told to us. So that's the first thing that I'm going to talk about because as I'm reading through this Wikipedia free encyclopedia online about hip hop culture, which is something that a lot of us identifies with as popular culture, based around rap and hip hop, and that even there's a big differentiation. I can see certain things that are alarming to me. When it comes to African American culture, there is a lot to be said about how Africans came to America. But there is also a lot of other things that encompasses the Black African experience in America. Things like religion, things like music, things like the civil rights movement and literature and art, which is something that we have never been able to have taken away from us in our experience and is ever sorry is ever evolving because of our new experiences that we are constantly shaping and amalgamating. And this is not something that's actually unique to us as a people outside of the fact of enslavement and slavery. Now, I don't know if I'm being demonetized when I have a conversation with people on my platform about that particular element of Black African culture in the West, but I do notice that it doesn't get as many reviews as it does, so I will link it in this video so that you can go check it out. I'm sorry about the audio. I think there was a real audio problem in that video. The second part, as I move back onto hip hop culture, which interestingly enough, hip hop and Black culture was interestingly enough about um I'm not gonna get even into like Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, and all of those first rappers that came out in like late 70s, early 80s, and culture in the in the northern part of America. I'm actually gonna take a step back. If you guys have seen, I think it was Dolomite. What was the name of that movie that this black guy, he wrote his own movie. Hang on a second. Let me go find. It wasn't Dolomite, or was it? Yes, it was Dolomite. And this movie is extremely important, not because it was hilariously funny and like, in its own right, being seen in having yourself being seen as a superhero in the eyes of through your own eyes, written by you and produced by you, which was a completely revolutionary concept, and the funniness of how he talked. Um, and his story is particularly interesting because of the style of storytelling that he used that was very specific to what was later on considered, I think, jive talking. And that in itself is something very specific to us Black African people. And I know this because it is the same in the Caribbean Creole culture in my country. And there are a couple of comedians that do some small time storytelling with this art, and it is very, very, very interesting to see the link between that and rap. So that was the skill of like double talking that rap came out of. And why am I bringing this up? I think that it is important to talk about literary genius because this is not so much well, it is a lot about what is being said, but the creativity in which it's done that makes us so unique as a people, that gives us so much flair and so much character and spice, if you may. I hate using that word spice when it comes to Black African people just because I don't know, I'm very self-conscious about also being Latina and how to like work out and marry those two elements of my life, but I digress. So this is something that I think is really interesting and important to remember because this guy Rudy Ray Moore, who plays Dolomite, I think it was his story. Yeah, and he was a visionary, and he believed in owning his own product and property. And I think that that was a part of the story that really intrigued and interests me because a lot of us have an issue with our story and our style and our way of being and our looks being packaged and resold back to us. And as one of the highest consumers of things like hair care products and beauty products, African American women are one of the highest consumers of that. We don't really own enough of the conversation to dictate and determine it, just and demand that the product is to a certain standard that reflects certain other positive elements about being Black. And this is particularly important, especially for the Being Mary Jane syndrome that I was very passionate about putting together. That we take this shopping, I mean, voting with our dollars seriously enough to the point that we cannot be ignored in the way that our products are being sold and presented to us. And this story for me was the one and only times that I felt it compelled to actually single out a person and say, this is what ownership really looks like. The other element about that is what is it that we're selling and why? Right. So I like the idea of I remember Bamboozled. Y'all remember Bamboozled? That crazy movie from Spike Lee. And I use the term very lovingly when I say crazy because it was one of those movies that blew my mind because I always felt like something was wrong. Like, and this movie just encompassed my feeling and reaffirmed and reassured certain concerns that I had had at the time that I had seen the movie. And I think I might have been like 18 or 19 when it came out. It was a really long time ago. But when I saw the movie, it was just like, yes, yes, this is it. This is the problem right here with our culture and the way we are being sold into a different kind of slavery that is even in some ways worse because it's a mental stronghold that we have in our perception of who we are as a people that continuously portrays this idiotic ideology of what it means to be black in the West. And hip hop has done a lot of good things for us, but it has also destroyed a lot of things about who we are as people that I just can't get with anymore. And I know that there's one rapper, and I will not give him a shout out in this video. Maybe I might have to do a video on his and his debacle with another very popular rapper at that time. I think it was in the 90s that had this huge media uproar about this difference of this rivalry. Like, this rivalry was a big defining moment of black on black violence. It is, and it still is to this day. And one of the things that I remembered once I started doing my research in history was that I think this young man had gone to college. So all of this struggle love and all of the things that he was artistically expressing about, like, this is what's happening in our family and this is what's happening in our communities, I really didn't appreciate. And I'm not saying I have to live in La La Land, but I really didn't appreciate that being the highlight and the message that he was pushing. Also, with the other rapper, they were pretty much one and the same, and I think they were at some point friends. But the history of him and who he was as a person was shocking to me. Like, I could not fathom that this was a educated man whose mother was an activist in her community, was running around and showing his ass, like we say, the way he was. And I still to this day get a lot of flack from my people when I say I'm not down with him and I'm not down with the other one that was like him. I'm down with rappers who actually have a message that is trying to uplift and empower our people, because I feel like if you are blessed with the opportunity to affect the lives of young black men, you should at least be a little bit more responsible. And I'm not saying completely responsible. Everybody has a choice to turn it off or not buy it, or make their own decisions. But if you have the chance and the opportunity to influence people in a way, it should be in a positive way and talk about some of the successes. And I know people are naturally drawn to the negative because it's in our nature to look for the dangers. But I think that we as a people absolutely 100% revere and cherish and need and are desperate for more positive voices in our communities, in our diaspora. And so I don't appreciate or support anybody who is about this thug struggle life at all on any level. And I'm sure that people may have their biases or their political views when I say that, because you might have an idea as to who exactly it is I'm talking about. But he's not important enough for me to single him out and say, this is the one individual that brought down the black community. There are several other people like him who could have done way more with their lives and their careers than they did, and they ultimately paid the price. And black people are still not able to understand and differentiate that, hey, if you live a certain way, of course you're going to draw certain levels of attention to yourself that are ultimately going to decide your fate in the future. This thing really enforces victimization and victimhood to the extent that when we think that that is our whole and complete experience. Who wrote his songs? Who promoted his videos? Who promoted people like that and pushed that narrative? And what is their benefit in seeing these kinds of situations flourish in our community so that we can feel a level of despair and hopelessness and powerlessness that this is our end destiny? That is the real question that needs to be asked. And why is it that why is it that there are not more Black successful people in the media arena who control more of the narrative that is being fed to us as a people? Now, I raise Bamboozled and Spike Lee. Shout out to Spike Lee, because this movie was one of the first times that I had seen us being portrayed by us and being told a harsh truth and reality about how the system works in a over dramatic way, so that there is no way that you couldn't get it. And that's what I've tried to do with my channel, is to bring some of the aspects of Black culture to life, so that people can start to realize and understand that you're being fed a narrative that is deliberately excluding certain aspects of that narrative, sorry, so that you can continue to feel oppressed and helpless and powerless. I just want to share with you a little bit more about um, hip hop culture, because it is where we are at basically. Um, Hip hop culture was, hang on a second. So Black American street culture, also known as hip hop African American culture, that had been a culture many years prior to the discovery was Columbus, man. While later reaching other groups such as Latino Americans and Caribbean Americans, starting in the Bronx, New York City, hip hop is one of the culture movements that has been shaped and dominated African American males. The female hip hop artists have contributed to the art form of culture as well. And this hip hop culture that basically started in the late 70s, early 80s, affected people around the world. I am married to a white, say it like that to be very dramatic so you could let it sink in, a white German man who, in his day, my husband's like 42, he's going to be 42 this November, who would stand in line at the record label company, the one record label company, um, in the other side of town, which was the only record company in that town, wait in line in the snow to get his first De La Soul record. Like, I'm talking about vinyl record, okay? 2 years after it had come out. And how did he find that out? Because I think he either saw it on MTV when MTV first came out in Germany, when the American soldiers came over, and they may have talked about that. There were some Black soldiers there, and so he started to divulge into the culture. And then MTV came out, and he heard the music, and he was feeling that music. That was in the early 90s. I mean, hip hop was already a thing afterwards, right? And I tell this story because it shaped his point of view so much so that he started to adopt a more broad sense of being, because hip hop culture was embraced and felt and heard around the world. And it wasn't the struggle of or the thug life or none of that other negative things that dominated this sense of swag and being cool. It was the survival and the happiness and the joy and and the strong sense of self that he was so drawn and attracted to. I wish I could bring him on here to talk about this himself, but that was one of the things that we really vibed on. That and our love for hiking and beer. But these are some, and basketball is a part of that, and other food is a part of that. And those are the things that he amalgamated and morphed into his sense of being. And a lot of people from that generation felt that and became a part of that voice and that movement. So we have been heard around the world. But one of the things that we are also hearing around the world is a part of the story that should not be told the way it's being told. And I think that we can do something about how it's being told in the future because we are the ones that we've been waiting for. Excuse me. I hope you guys are having a great Saturday. If you have made it to the end, I wanted to announce that we are moving out our apartment. I don't know if you guys have seen our apartment on my YouTube channel or on my other platforms or where I live. I will be posting some updated um videos of how I am living in the south of Germany because we are going to be moving in our home into our home in a little village on the other side of the country, and that's going to be taking place in a few months. So I will try to keep up with my uploads. I can't promise anything, but if you don't see or hear from me, I am probably, you know, buried under boxes. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and if you can, please, of course, make sure that you always stay safe and stay free.